Okay, so we're going to be doing Mix It Up 2, which is going to be a fascinating departure from Mix It Up 1. It's looking at using the ink techniques that I taught you on the first one, playing around, taking those, developing them, pushing them a bit further, then using the acrylic paints rather than oils to paint into it, and getting various different techniques with the oil paints that are a bit more quirky and different. So let's get going, shall we? Now the first stage is taking a charcoal pencil, having your reference image and sketching it in. I have checked, you can see that I've got loads of stuff here that I'm going to be using. It's all just, you know, up to you which ones you want to pick and choose. You can see here I've got a lot of different equipment and chemicals that I'm going to be using. It's up to you which ones you want to do. Pick and mix, change things, develop it, make it your own. So to start off with, I've got a piece of canvas. It needs to be quite hardy. You can do it on paper, but make sure it's thoroughly primed. Then I'm taking a charcoal pencil and I'm going to sketch in my reference image. My reference image is more square, so I have changed the, sorry, while I'm drawing, I'm just trying to concentrate. I have changed the aspect ratio of the piece of canvas that I'm working on to make sure that that is correct. I got a little plum there. I got an apple sneaking up underneath the flower. Just slid over here, and then I got leaves and some plants there. I need to squish that over a little bit more. Let's take that over here. Don't be worried of having pencils marks in the wrong place. A lot of this is going to be reworked quite severely with the technique we're going to be employing. Ooh, a nice swell. Okay, I'm going to bring that over there a little bit more. Bring that down. Okay, so we've got a very rough guideline to work on. Now I'm going to have some fun with ink. First of all, I'm going to put in some ink and I'm going to start using some bleach, which can be quite nice. So I've got some Higgins ink. The bleach technique won't work if you're using Indian ink. Higgins is just a standard ink which works really well in this technique, but generally all different brands will work quite well. It's got quite a high pigment quality. That means I can go really dark with this, which can give me various options. I've taken about 2 brush strokes into my plastic pot, added some water, and I'm just going to throw it in. And I'm going to look at putting this in where I want some really interesting, different, diverse texture marks. Oh god, I'm already splattering my reference image with that. So I'm going to put it in for the flower, which will work quite well. And there's some nice folds here. Let's throw in a bit around the folds. There's some shadows down here on the material. I'm going to try and leave the fruit if at all possible at the moment, and build that up with some of the other techniques. I'm going to take that, and then I've got a spray bottle of water, which just spritzes the ink up a little bit more. Okay, you can take your board and tilt it and get various different tonal changes that way. I'm going to grab a little bit of neat ink and throw that in around there. I'm going to then just spritz it out with a little bit more. Grab a little bit of water on my brush, bring that in, get a little bit of solution around these parts. Then I'm going to get a plastic tray and some pure bleach. Cheap bleach, nothing expensive, and I'm going to work that into the surface. Now make sure you always clean your brush after using the bleach. You can see there, I've got like strings because it's quite a thick bleach. So I'm just stringing in. I've got a little bit, I need a bit more actually. Make sure you have a window open and good ventilation. Do not do this if you're asthmatic or have any other breathing problems. That to one side. I'm going to clean my brush. And then I'm going to get a bit of tissue, and this is quite thick. I'm going to scrunch it into a ball. Okay? And I'm looking at the different type of textures I want to get. So around here, it's quite interesting. I'm going to take some of the ink out around there, okay, and I can see like this flower around here. I'm just gonna blot that out easier as well, but I'm gonna leave this dark. I really like that dark down there, it looks nice. And to be quite honest, I fancy making it a little bit more dark down here, so I've cleaned my brush. I'm gonna get some ink and I'm going to put in the ink a little bit more neat around here. And you should be taking your ink out of a container. Okay, don't take it out of the container generally that you're painting in. A little dark shade down there. Unless you've really made sure that you thoroughly clean your brush each time. Throw in a little bit of dark along this back section, like so. Right, now I'm going to get that tissue again, and I'm going to try and drag it in. So I'm using the tissue more to draw with. Picking up the pigment and creating really interesting marks. Like so. Right, what you can do as well, you can use a hairdryer just to chase around a little bit. Be careful not to get too close and to chase too much, or you'll lose a lot of the different textures and patterns that you can create using the earlier techniques. Okay, so it's drying enough just for me to get some texture in, so I'm just kind of scrunching up my piece of tissue, and I'm going to take off a little bit of ink which is quite dark where I want the flower head to go. I'm also going to take off a little bit around here for the highlight on the fabric, if I can see, and soften down some of it around here. Some really interesting textures. I'm going to get my bubble wrap. See if I can pick up a little bit of ink on this bottom right corner and use it to print. working. I think it'll be quite interesting to have a little bit over here. The drier the surface, the crisper the print you're going to get. So if you're doing it and it's slightly wet, it will bleed out, but you know, you might like that. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. You could use a little bit of cling film if you're feeling extravagant, doing something slightly different while this is all still wet. Really, with the cling film you have to be super patient and make sure it's thoroughly dry before you remove it off the surface. So you take a bit of cling film, as I'm trying to rip off at this current stage. Okay. You can then, I think it'll be kind of nice to do some around there. Work it into the wet sections and you'll get a variation of patterns coming through. I'm not going to have it on there because that's kind of where I want the sheet to be. I'm going to take that up a bit. And you can press into it while it's wet and that will shape the type of textures you can get. So now the trick is to have patience and allow it to dry. You can use a hairdryer, but be very careful. It can blow the pigments around and end up losing all the different tonal changes. Also, if you feel like you've gone a little bit too dark some places, you could always pick up a little bit of extra bleach, so I've got on my brush here, and work that into the surface. And that will add lighter sections and burn marks into the picture. I think actually I probably would need a little bit more bleach. You can do the bleaching when it's dry, you don't have to do the bleach work when it's wet. Right, so I've allowed this to dry and now I'm going to peel off the cling film and you should be getting some really interesting patterns. Remember, this is about creating a hybrid artwork that doesn't consume the patterns are part of it. It's still a little bit damp because you can see how my piece of canvas is kind of a bit up and down, but I'm going to go with that. We'll work with it. Now to start off with, we're going to do the resistor techniques, okay? And anything that needs to be going down early. I'm going to use the brown gum paper. So with the brown gum paper it can create a crackling effect which can be rather nice. I'm going to rip off a little bit. Create some rough kind of flower heads, which could be interesting. Okay, I'm going to just keep it simple. I'm just showing you the demo. I've got that ready. I've got my Vaseline. Again, it's about protecting areas of paint, so you can take a bit of Vaseline and anywhere that you particularly like. So around here, I'm going to put in a decent thickness. Vaseline, so it protects some of that ink work, so that's rather nice. The other form of protection that you can do within your picture is masking tape to protect areas. So you can take a piece of masking tape, you can shape it, then you can get it to stick down. Now I've got a bit of Vaseline on my fingers and now the masking tape won't stick, but it'll give you the rough idea of how that can work. Okay. Now looking around, I'm going to keep it relatively simple. So that means then that we actually get into doing some of the painting section now, and we're going to be doing tonking and various different things with the acrylic paint. I'm keeping it real simple, so we're just using black and white. I have a palette that you can squirt some black and white out onto. With this type of painting, the key is the contrast that you can generate. Now, first of all, I'm going to grab a brush and I'm going to use a little bit of the white acrylic to glue down the gum tape. Now, the gum tape needs to be shiny side up for this to work. So do make sure you're gluing it the correct way. Right, let's get in and have some fun. Now we're going to have to leave that to dry a little bit more, but we can deal with some of the other bits. I'm going to do some of the fruit, which I think will be kind of nice. So let's start off with this apple here, which is sitting down here. I am going to put in a really nice thick white acrylic paint. I'm going to add a little bit of black, and I'm going to grab a tissue. I can clean off my brush and I can smooth that in. Generate that apple shape. I'm going to add in some more paint so it's really thick. Then I'm going to get a bit of newspaper. And it's called tonking, whereby you take a piece of paper on top of thick paint, you press down on the back and you pull away, okay? And you get a really interesting effect. You get a slight texture and a graduation of tone, which can work quite well. I'm going to just do this apple that's sitting above, around here, so add a little bit of grey in, a little bit of grey, add a little bit of black in. Get a clean bit of newspaper, press it down and take it away. So, the camera, fold over that bit of newspaper. Okay, so that is tonking. It's a really nice effect that you can generate. The other thing you can do is you can play around with textures. So you could grab some white, and let's put some white real thick down here. Let's do the soft highlights coming in around the bottom here. And I'm going to get some anagalactic and I'm pressing into that. And you're going to get a pattern by doing that. Now if you add a little bit of black into it, because I've got that shadow going there, find that it just smears out and gives you a much more delicate tone. You might find that you want to do some up here. Grab a little bit of black. Careful not to get cross-contamination. You need to use a fresh piece of anagalactic to get it to work. And you'll find that you can, if you wanted to, you can take the pattern on the anagalactic, paint it, as long as you're fast because you know it's acrylic, and you can then push that into the surface. Get some interesting. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of bubble wrap and I'm going to work some of the leaves around here. Bubble wrap. So you can put down some white if you want to, or if you're feeling bold, you can paint the bubble wrap and put some of the bubble wrap down. print off, like so. Works really well. I can get a little bit more down there. Okay. So you've got that as an option as well. If you want to, you can play around, see where you want to take it. The other thing you can do is you can use netting quite nicely. So you need the paint and a stiff brush and a deeper tone. I think I might do a little bit of that on the apples. Yeah, that's nice. It's getting a little bit blocked up, which is what you're going to find happens sometimes. Grab a little bit more paint. Look at where you're doing it. Yeah, and you can get various different prints that way. So that's just to give you a few taste hints of where you can take it. Once you've done that and you've played around, you've got some textures in, you haven't overworked it because you've got to see some of the textures that you've built up for that ink, then you need to take a fine brush and start doing the core painting. So for that, it's all about dealing with your contrast, dealing with your light and dark, and layering in enough information so that the forms and structures make sense. Okay, so I've done a little bit, as you can see there. Now I'm going to get a kitchen roll, piece of tissue, and I'm just going to soften out the edges. So I'm going to grab a little bit of water, and just take that out. I want you to really look at the highlights, the shadows. Okay, I want you to also paint into the patterns a little bit now. So you're using the patterns within the artwork and really exaggerating them. Right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to get some water. It's a little bit mucky, but it doesn't matter. And I'm going to add some white paint to it. I'm going to add some more water to it because I need it really runny for this effect. So it's more like a watercolour runny. Then I'm going to paint that over the top of the gum tape. And then I'm going to let it dry. And as it dries, it should create a crackle effect. Okay, now while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to get a tissue and I'm going to pick up a little bit of paint on my tissue and I'm going to start just whacking it in around there. So it's kind of textured. I'm going to put in a little bit of darker tone occasionally. But a lot of it's going to be a lighter grey tone. And it's quite a thick, globby layer of paint. I'm also going to do it just as this branch comes down. Create a texture that's going to work for my yellow flowers. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of my wallpaper. I'm going to just press into it occasionally as well. And I'm going to smooth out that colour so there's not such a hard jump in contrast. Start bringing it in for the highlight. Then obviously add a little bit of black for the shadowy tone. Take it off your brush. Smooth in to one another. Try not to obliterate all the texturization that you've got as well. It's easy to go over the top. Now because it's acrylic, this is already drying, so I can come in with a little bit of white. Just whacking in a little bit of a highlight on the contours. I want the paint real nice and thick. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, the crackling effect that's starting to happen on the brown paper. Just around here. Okay, and I'm going to pour out some black ink now and work back into everything. Right, so I'm going to take some black ink and pour it into a container, just a tiny amount. You could use a brush if you wanted to get that out. Add a little bit of water, not much, just a little. It go a bit further. And now that fundamentally, if all is well, your picture should be dry. Yes, it is. Might be a few spots, but that's pretty good. So take a fine brush and start drawing in the flower. Before I lean on it, I'm just going to check it's dry. So, I've got this lovely crackle effect that I'm going to use. And I've got a flower just coming in here, like so. So, right. I'm going to grab my acrylic, wash my brush, and just work that up a little bit now. I've got my flowers, I can just sprinkle in some detail.